I'm going to show you how I turn this concept into this 3D model in Blender. I hope you enjoy this tutorial. So let's get into it. Okay guys, here we are in Blender, and I'm using version 3.3 for this tutorial. And before we start to model, I want to show you some preferences that I have configured here. Go to the Edit mode and select Preferences. Let's start with the system settings. If you have a video card, make sure to select the video card here in the Cycles Render Devices. Let's go to Add-ons and select Community. I'm using these two items over here. This checkbox is selected by default. Let's start with the Viewport Pie menu. So there are many options here. What is the Pie menu? Pie menu is this kind of menu. So you can easily work with this menu. For example, if I go here, apply Transform Pie in the menu with the hotkeys Ctrl A, if I press Ctrl A, you can see that all of these options appear. And another thing I like about Pie menus is that you can learn where any option is located, and you can access it quickly almost without any issues with the selection. Okay, let's unselect this checkbox and press Ctrl A. In this case, you will get this classic menu. You will have to be more careful with what you are selecting here. Sometimes you can misclick and you cannot be as fast as with the Pie menus because you must make sure that you click the option that you need. So that's it with the Pie menu. It's very useful. So let's go on with Mesh Loop Tools. You can find Mesh Loop Tools here. By the way, you can search for these two add-ons. They are free here. You just need to unselect this checkbox and enter the name of the setting here. For example, Loop Tools or Pie menu. So let's talk about Loop Tools. You can access Loop Tools in the Edit mode. Press Tab and you will see all these options here. The ones that I like the most and the ones that I use the most are the Circle, the Flatten, and the Space options. Let me briefly demonstrate how to work with them. For example, I have this surface over here. I go to Loop Tools and select Circle. This object is circled, so to say. It's a very useful feature. Now let's go on with the next one called Flatten. For example, I have this surface. It's uneven. You can easily notice that it's uneven. So I go to Flatten to level the unevenness of the surface. It's very useful as well. It doesn't have to be the top part of the surface. It can be any surface. I apply Flatten. This function aligns all of these edges and vertices. Now let's proceed with the next one, Space. If I have this arrangement of vertices like this, if I have these vertices, for example, they are located at different distances from each other, and I want them to be at the same distance. We select all these edges. We can select the vertices as well. It doesn't matter. And go here and click Space. It didn't work at first because the distance is too big. So I go here, click this icon over here, and select Edge Length. You can see that it didn't work properly from our first try. You can see the values here. For example, 0.83, 0.78, 0.731. But if I click it and select Space, it's going to be slowly fixed. If I press Shift R to repeat the last action, again Shift R, Shift R, Shift R. You see now that they all have the same distance. I had to try so many times and click so many times because the difference was huge. But if you go here, for example, and click space, you won't need to press Shift R so many times. See, the values are 0.924. So they are all the same. It's quite a useful tip. Let's better proceed with the navigation. Here I have selected this checkbox. It's called Orbit Round Selection. It makes it easier to navigate when you select something and just want the camera to orbit in that direction automatically. It's just easier like this. That's why I have enabled it. I delete this object and some info about the shortcuts that I use. By the way, I don't use the middle mouse button to navigate. I use the right mouse button. It's more convenient for me. I press right shift to move, control right click to zoom, and alt right click to rotate or orbit. So let's go here. In my case, these checkboxes are not selected. I don't like this type of pie menu. I don't like to call the pie menu by pressing the tab key. I prefer to press tab to switch to the edit mode. If I want to use any other of these options, I just press Control Tab. It's a shortcut for that. So just press Control Tab and you will access these options. Now let's look into this. It's a very handy shortcut that I use. It's called Frame. Frame Selected and Frame All. Let's scroll here to the 3D view. Here are these two options that I use, Frame Selected and Frame All. So the default shortcut for Frame Selected is numpad plus dot, but this combination is very inconvenient for me. I don't like it when my fingers move too far away from each other to press the hotkeys. I don't like moving my left hand from the Control and Shift buttons. I think that I waste too much time on such unnecessary movements. So what I did was I assigned my own shortcut to it. It's Control Alt and right click. If I press Control Alt right click, you can see that the frame is selected. Now if I want to apply Frame All, for example, I have this object over here, you can see that the shortcut for this action is Control Home. And again, these buttons are too far away. If you are to press Control and Home, you have to move your right hand away from the mouse and press the Home button. It's super inconvenient for me. And Shift-C works better for me. But I just use this one, Shift, Control, Alt, right click. So you don't have to select anything. Just click Shift, Control, Alt, and right click. See? It framed everything. Or you can use the shortcut Shift-C. Perfect. Now another one I want to tell you about, and which I think is very useful, is this one called Local View. There is a default shortcut for Local View. It's a slash. Again, it's too far away from my hand to use it conveniently. So I have assigned another shortcut to it. It's Alt and double right mouse click. So if there are two or more objects and you want to isolate just this one, just press Alt and double right click to isolate it. If I use this shortcut again, I exit the local view. But the local view is not the same as hide, because as you can see, the objects are not hidden. They're just temporarily hidden or isolated. If you want to hide an object, just press the H key. If you want to unhide, press Alt-H. Oh, sorry. This shortcut is going to show everything. And if you want to hide everything, except the object that you have selected, press Shift-H. Press Alt-H to show everything. So that's it with the shortcuts. I think that you got the idea. Now I want to show you these useful settings that I have set up here. Make sure that this checkbox is selected in your setup. It's called Autosave Preferences. It saves your preferences automatically. Let's delete all this. So now we can finally start our tutorial. The very first thing to do is to select one of these workspaces. And select this one, because you'll be editing. It's useful because I can work with the image over here and the model over here. Now I select this one here and just click Open and find your reference image to add it here. I place it over here. And that's it for this part. And disable this option here. Because if it's enabled, every time you select something here, it's going to show up in the reference. That's why unselect this option over here. So here we are. Here we have our cube. And I want to start with this part over here, the top body part. So let's do that. Let's press the N key so that these settings appear here. What am I going to do now? I want the height of this object to be slightly bigger than its width. So let's try to do it using the X and Y axis. And enter 0.9. Awesome. Now add a loop. Go to the Edit mode. Press Tab. Control R to add a loop. The program will ask you where you want to add this loop. We want it here, so make sure to hover over the edge where you want it to be. So I want it here, and the middle of this loop is selected, this edge. So I click, and after I click, I have another option here, and the loop slides, so I can select the exact position for it. If you press Ctrl, you can move step by step here. If you press Shift, you can move smoothly, or you can just manually write where you want it to be. For example, while I'm here in the slide mode, I can enter 0.5, and it's going to move into 0.5 in space. But I don't want it to be at 0.5, so I just press Ctrl R, click, and click the right button to release. I don't want it to slide anymore. So by clicking the right button, you can exit the slide mode. And I want to add another loop. Because I have this part over here, when I add it, press Ctrl R, click, and release. Let's try to move it using these settings. Let's try to set 0.5. Perfect. Make sure that you are in the front view. The front view is this one. The -y, negative y. I can see it here. Negative y. By the way, I use this pie menu a lot. It's called with the button that is just before the number 1 button on the keyboard, the apostrophe key. So let's proceed with this. Now let's scale this top part. Select it with the number 3 key. By the way, you have these 3 options here. Select this. Press Tab in the Edit mode. This one is for the vertices. This one is for the edges. This one is for the faces. And you can access them by pressing 1, 2, and 3 while you are in the Edit mode. So let's try the face selection and press SY, and let's scale it. While scaling, I'm monitoring the values. I'm monitoring the numbers that appear over here. Just pay attention to these numbers. So I press SY, and you can see the numbers are changing there. So I'm going to try to use 0.4 or some similar value. You can enter 0.4 to ensure that the number is accurate. Now let's work on this part over here. And if you are in the face selection mode and click this edge here, you will select the whole loop. Let's press SY. And let's try to set 0.6. Perfect. I like it. Now let's press the A key and select everything here. So it's all selected. For example, if you have something selected and press here, you will unselect it. So now nothing is selected. Press again and everything is selected. Go to Edge mode and press Ctrl B. This command calls the bevel options here. You can use your mouse wheel or your middle mouse button to add more edges. So I'm going to add an extra edge here. And I want something like this. Let's round it here. Enter 0.1. Excellent. I want to enable this checkbox here to see the edges. Okay. Now I will use this thing over here. It's a modifier called Subdivision Surface, which you can access using a shortcut that is Ctrl-1. So there are 4 shortcuts for this modifier. They are Ctrl-1, Ctrl-2, Ctrl-3, and Ctrl-4. Those 4 shortcuts are related to the level's viewport number. So I'm currently on number 4. I like number 2, so I press Ctrl-2. And the reason why this object looks like that is because we need to shade the surface. So I press the spacebar. And here in the search field, I enter Shade Smooth. And click here. And it didn't work because I didn't select it. So let's do it again. Now it worked. Now the next thing I want to do is these 4 holes over here. I switch to the Edit mode. Press the 2 key, H and Ctrl R. I'm going to add 3 of them using my middle mouse button. So click and release. Now I have 4. So I want to work without this option activated. I want to work here. Like this. Perfect. Now, in order to create a perfect circle, I need to know the length here. If I add these elements here, I must ensure that they are at the same distance from these 4 edges. So I delete this one. I will apply the scale. So press Ctrl A and select Scale. The reason I apply scale is that the original shape of this object was a cube. So if I try to move or scale something, I won't achieve a proper scaling, or it won't move where I want it to move. So I applied scale. So we have a new object. All the values are zeroed. As you see, it's 1 in here. Before that action, it wasn't like this. Let's revert. As you can see, the values here are 0.9 and 0.9. Apply scale. It resets the old scale. Now, as I said, I want to have a perfect length of the edges here between this vertical line and the one that I want to add over here. So before doing that, I go here. In the edit mode, I click here, and in measurement, I enable the edge length checkbox. So I'm going to add a loop here. And as you can see, the value here is 0.405. And here the value is 0.318. I want them to be the same, to have the same value. So if I press Alt-click, I select the whole loop. And then I press G twice to activate the slide mode. So press G twice, and check the scale over here. I make sure that these lengths are the same. So it's 0.405. Here we go. And now it's perfect. Let's deactivate this option. Let's unselect this checkbox. Perfect. Now select these 4 squares and press the I key. So what I did was add an inside polygon or inside face. As you see, this function is called inset faces. Now I select the individual checkbox, and let's change this value a little bit. I want it to be 0.05. Now we need to create a circle here. You may remember that to do it, we would go to Loop Tools and select Circle. We cannot use it in this case because it's square, not a circle. It only has 4 sides. So let's add some extra loops here. Now go to the face mode here. And by the way, if you cannot use this selection option, if you hover over here, you will see these options. The select box mode. You can change it using the W button. Now right-click, Loop Tools and Circle. As you can see, I have this option called Best Fit. But I want to use the option Fit Inside. So it's going to be not that big. I want it to be something like this. Perfect. And press E to extrude the surface. Like this. And set 0.5 here. Perfect. And again, add an inset face. To do this, press the I key. Perfect. And unselect the individual checkbox. And set 0.03 here. Perfect. Now let's see how it looks. Activate this icon. Perfect. Press F5. By the way, I have this shortcut here for my wireframe. As you see, the shortcut is F5. You can create a shortcut by just right-clicking over here, and in the drop-down menu, you will see the option called Assign Shortcut. There was no shortcut, so I really just had to add it. Now we have our holes, and let's create this little line here. Let's unselect this checkbox. I see that I have an extra loop here. I will delete it. I select it and press Ctrl X to delete an edge. Let's use this one for the line. So what I want to do is a bevel. Press Ctrl B. In segments, set 1. And let's round up this setting here to 0.01. And let's press Alt-E and select Extrude Face Along Normals. As we can see, it's extruded in the normals faces, normals orientation. So let's configure the settings like this. 0.03, let's try this number. Perfect. And let's see. It looks good. Now let's create these objects here. I'm going to hide this for a moment. So press Shift A and insert a cube. Press Ctrl 2 tool. Spacebar to switch to shape mode. Let's go to the edit mode and add a loop over here and another loop over here as well. Let's delete this surface over here. And let's try to add another one. Another cube. And I want to see through this object. So I press Shift Z to activate an X-ray. Perfect. So let's scale down. Press the S key, 0.5. Just scale it by half. And as I said, I use this pie menu a lot. You call it with the apostrophe key that is before your number 1 button, and above the tab button. I use it a lot. Let's try to apply SY5. And I'm going to move this along the y-axis. So I press GY, and I wanted to snap in these little squares degree. So I'm going to press GY and Control to snap it. So it's here. Perfect. Press Shift Z to exit the X-ray mode. Excellent. I want it to be more flat, so press SZ. 0.5. Perfect. Press Shift A to create another cube to make another part of this object. Firstly, press Shift GY to move it. Then go to the X-ray mode by pressing Shift Z. Perfect. It goes over here. Okay. Let's exit the X-ray mode. Go to the Edit mode. Select this one and press SX. Now I configure the settings like this. 0.3 would work for me. And here in the object mode, press SZ 0.5. Awesome. Now let's add the modifier subdivision surface. And as you can notice, it looks weird. So let's add the bevel modifier. So move the bevel so it's above the subdivision surface. Now it looks better. Press the spacebar and change the mode and do the same here. Bevel, move it upwards. You can move it by holding and dragging the corner here. See? Press the spacebar to change the mode. Perfect. I like it. And we need to create another such element for the other part. It's larger. Let's apply this bevel and let's apply this bevel as well. So let's join these two objects. Press Ctrl J. And I want to rotate it, but using this axis, this cursor's orientation. So press the dot button and change from median to cursor, and create a copy with Shift D. Release the right mouse button, press R. You don't need to specify that you're moving in the Z-axis because you are in the top view. It's an autographic view. So the only rotation possible is rotation by the Z-axis. So just for you to know, when you're in autographic view, you can rotate in only one way. So you don't need to specify anything. So press R and 90. Perfect. And I want this object to be bigger. Since I want to make it bigger, I go to the X-ray mode, Shift Z, let's move it a little bit. Let's move it in the X-axis direction. And move it like this. By 2 cells. And go to the Edit mode. Press 1. Select this and press GX. Press Ctrl and release here. Now we have another one. Looks good. Now let's join all these surfaces. Let's select this one too. The last one to select should be this one. Make sure to select this last because we'll use it as an orientation pivot point. So press Ctrl J. And I want to use this pivot point to snap it to this area over here. But if I use the pivot point, you're going to overlap all the surfaces that are over here because the pivot point is over here. Now let's move the pivot point here. So Alt and click on this edge to select the whole loop. And after that, press Ctrl Alt X to call the Origin menu and click Origin to selected. Now my origin point is here. Excellent. This object is too large. Let's display this one. It is too large comparing with this other object. So let's scale it. And I'm going to pay attention to this one or to this one. It doesn't matter. So let's try 0.0. Let's set it to 14. And moving it with the GYU, let's frame this. I think it's perfect. Okay, let's try to snap it over here. I activate the snapping. Use the vertex option, select the medium point, and select the rotation to target checkbox. So press G and click here. It looks perfect here. Now we're going to copy it to paste in other holes, but I want to rotate some of them so they don't look the same. And I'm going to use my cursor as a pivot point to rotate these arrows. So let's select this one, press 1, go to the Edit mode, press 1, Shift S, and cursor to select it. Now press Shift D to copy and move it here. Now I'm going to change the orientation, the pivot point, to the cursor. So press the dot button and select the 3D cursor here. Go to the Edit mode and press the 3 key. Select this option, pressing the L key, press L again, and press RZ. You can notice that if you press RZ, it does not rotate properly, because I need to rotate it in the local view of this object. So you can either change it here, or you can press the comma key or go to the menu and select local. and again press RZ. You can see that now it works properly as expected. If you want, you can repeat the same here. Press RZ. Let's try to position it here. So repeat the same steps here too. Let's repeat. Go here. Press the number 1 key. Shift S, cursor to selected, and go here. And press Shift D. Again, press the L key. Press the 3 numpad key, L, R, Z. Let's try this position. Press L, 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 R, Z. I'm not checking this, by the way. And the same here. Press the 1 key. Shift S, cursor to selected, Shift D. Go here, R, Z. And here, 3, L, R, Z. Perfect. We achieved such a result. Now let's make this object over here. I will join all of these objects. So press Ctrl J, and I click this eye icon to hide it. Enable this icon. So press Shift A, go to Mesh, and I'm going to use a cylinder. Before creating any object, make sure this cursor is in the origin of the coordinates. Press Shift S and select Cursor to World Origin. Again, press Shift A and select Cylinder. We set 8 in vertices here, and I'm not going to use this part over here, so delete it. Let's move on. Press the 2 key, Alt, and click to select the whole group, and press S to scale it a little bit. But before scaling it, make sure to change the pivot point orientation. To do this, press the dot key and medium point. Let's try to set 1.5. Press the 3 key, select the faces, press I and select Inset Faces. So press I, then set approximately 0.3 in thickness, then press E. Again, set minus 0.3, then press I again. Set the value of 0.1 in thickness, then press E. Set 0.4 in X. Now I'm going to scale it a little bit, just a little bit. Press S and set 0.8, it will work for us. And let's add subdivision surface. Press Ctrl 2 and select this mode. So spacebar and shade mode. It looks quite good. Let's try to apply a loop tool here and move it right here. Set minus 0.5. It will be okay. So it looks better now. Let's show this object here. And let's try to scale it. Press the S key. I think it's too short. So let's try to set 0.15. It's perfect now. Now the only thing we need to do is to move this object here. So I'm going to add it to the middle of this line. Just click here on the mapping mode. Unselect the checkbox Align Rotation to Target. So let's see what we got. Press G and click here. Now it's in the middle of this line. Now switch to the left view and rotate it to get something like this. You can rotate it by 90 degrees, but I will rotate it by about 75 degrees, like this, and move it a little bit. Let's change this setting to global. Press D, Y, and we get something like this. In Y, set 0.75. Cool. Now let's reset all the transformations. So press Ctrl A and apply to all. Let's reset everything. Rotation, scale, location. Press here on Apply All. Now let's add a mirror modifier. Cool. Let's deactivate this icon. Now apply mirror over here. Press Ctrl A. By the way, I use Ctrl A to apply the modifiers. You can click here on this little arrow and select the option Apply. And you can see the shortcut here. It's Ctrl A. You must be in this menu to apply it. If I click here, no, it won't work. You must have this menu selected. Ctrl A to apply. Select this one, and press Ctrl J. In this way, I join these two objects. Okay, now let's proceed with the arms. Let's hide this object and adjust the view here. I add a plane, Shift A. Go to the tab view and scale in X-axis. S, X, and in scale X. I set 0.3. Next, go to the edit mode. Ctrl R to add edge loops. I'm going to add 2 edge loops here. Next, go to face selection. Click here and press P to separate that surface from the other ones. Go to the object mode and go here. Now I'm going to move the middle point here. Press Ctrl Alt X. Select origin into center of mass. Next, I'm going to scale it, approximately like this. Now I round this number to 1.3. Next, I switch to the edit mode. Press the 3 key. Select the face. Go to subdivide. Now, again, I apply the scale. Here's what would happen if I didn't apply the scale. This happens because it's stretched here. The scale changes it. That's why apply the scale. Now go to the edit mode, loop tools, select circle. Now go to the edit mode and move this by the y-axis. Approximately like this. It doesn't have to be exactly like this, just something like this. And next, go to the edit mode, edge selection. Select this edge, Ctrl B, to apply bevel to this edge. In width, set 0.08. Press X, delete the faces. Now I switch to the knife tool. It cuts through the surface and creates surfaces like this. When I click here on this edge, then I press Shift to snap it to the center of this edge. And then click on and then press Enter to release. Again here, press Shift, click, Enter. Perfect. Go to this edge. Ctrl X to delete this. Now we have a space here. Now select these 2 edges, Ctrl J. Go to the edit mode. Select these 2 edges. Press F to fill this hole. Or to join these 2 edges. Perfect. Select these 2 faces and rotate them. Now I set 70 degrees. I move it along the x-axis. Something like this. In Move X, I set 0.46. Perfect. Now let's go on and apply subdivision surface. I add an edge here, go to the edit mode and press Ctrl R, edge here, press Enter. Okay, now add another one here, Ctrl R here. Control R here, and let's proceed with vertex selection. Select these two vertices and press S to scale them. In scale X, I set 1.08. I'm changing it because it doesn't look round enough. I press the G key twice and move it approximately like this. (0.17), and now press S to get something like that. Perfect. Now let's make the upper arm part. Again, press Shift A. I press S, X, 0.3. And this object is slightly bigger. So I press S, Y, 1.1. Perfect. Control tool. Sorry, here. Press Tab, Control R, and add to it. Now rotate it. Remember, we set 30 degrees here, so I rotate in the opposite direction. -30, and position it like this. So we get something like this. Excellent. Now let's add solidify. Like this. Go here. I want to see it better. Set the value around 0.25 and apply. Go to the edit mode. Select all these edges and press Ctrl V. Perfect. The width of 0.07 is okay for me. Now press the spacebar and go to the object mode. Do the same here. Go here, select solidify. Then apply with Ctrl A. I'm going to isolate the object. I go to the edit mode, select all these edges. Press Ctrl B. Set width to 0.06. Then object mode and go to front view. And Alt DC. Something like that. Perfect. Set 23, 24 here. Okay. Perfect. Let's join these two objects. Let's unhide this object here and rotate it. Rotate it by 90 degrees. Move it over here and I click on scale. Set 0.67. Perfect. Go to the front view, GX. Now let's add these little circles. Go to the left view, press Shift A, and select Cylinder. Now I isolate this object, go to the Edit mode, edit this one, Ctrl 2, then go to the Edit mode, add an edge here, set 75 and go here, and apply Insert. I press the I key, set 25 in thickness. Excellent. Switch to the object mode and shade it. Now rotate it. Place it here. Go to the X-ray mode and position it approximately like this, and click on Scale. Here you go. And round this number to 0.13. Now move it here. GX to get something like this. Then go to the Edit mode. Select this as an edge loop. Press Alt and click and move it along the X-axis. GX. Approximately like this. Now it's perfect. And one more here. For this one, I will just copy the already created element. Like this. Switch to the back view. Press DX. Here you go. Perfect. Now I'm going to join all these objects. Press Ctrl J. And apply this action. I will apply everything here and go to Mirror. Excellent. Now let's make the head. Hide this object. Press Shift A. Go to Mesh and select UV Sphere. Decrease the resolution here. 12 rings would be okay. Press Ctrl 2 to level the resolution surface. Press the spacebar, enter the shade mode, and that's it. Hide this object again. Go to the top view, Shift A. Go to Curve and click Circle. Then press SY. But before doing that, I go here and click on Increment because I'm going to use the Snap tool to snap to the grid. So press SY and hold Control and hold there. Release at this point, it's 0.2. Repeat the same here. Go to the Edit mode. Select these two vertices. Go to this menu, or press the period key, it doesn't matter. Select individual origins, press S, Y, hold Ctrl pressed and press the 2 key. You can write it down as well, S, Y, and the 2 key. Now select these ones, press G, Y, keep Ctrl pressed, enter 0.1. Perfect. Now apply this scale, Ctrl A, click on Scale, go to the Object Properties, go to Geometry, and In Depth, set 0.26. OK. And decrease the resolution here and here too. Perfect. Press Ctrl 2. That's cool. Now let's add a plane. I'm moving along the x-axis. Hold Ctrl pressed and let's set 2.7. And go to the Edit mode and select Subdivide. Now switch to the Vertex Selection mode. Select this vertex over here, G, Y, hold Ctrl pressed, and set 0.9 here. Repeat the same procedure with these two vertices here, set 0.9. Now select this one, G, Y, set -0.2, go to the Object mode and press Ctrl and the 2 key. Perfect. Let's make it a little bit bigger. S, Alt, Control. Something like this. 1.2. Okay, let's make the eyes. Shift A and select Plane, G, X. Keep Ctrl pressed, move it over here. Set 2.7. Then scale by the x-axis. Press S, X. Now hold Ctrl pressed, move here and select 0.3. Next, go to the Edit mode and apply Subdivide. Select these vertices here and change here to medium point. Press S. Hold Ctrl pressed. Set 0.9. Now let's add the modifier. Press Ctrl 2. Perfect. Let's press S. Set 0.6 will be okay here. G, Y, and position it like this. Set 0.27. It doesn't really matter. I simply adjust it right here. Excellent. Now let's bring up this here. And I want to rotate this. Switch to the right view. Set -90. Perfect. Let's see how it looks. I'm going to scale it using the cursor. So go here or press the Build button. Select 3D Cursor and press S. Then hold Ctrl. Something like that. Set 0.24. G, Y. Set -0.1. Perfect. Now I'm going to rotate this using the medium point. Here it is, the medium point. I press R and I. Set -30 degrees and move it like this. Perfect. Now I'm going to select this one, and I will add the shrink wrap modifier. And I click here to pick the sphere. Excellent. I change this setting to project, switch to the top view, and move this over here. Okay, now it looks better. Nice. Now I go here and select Solidify. Before using Solidify, apply Scale, and let's use it. Set 0.05. When I press the spacebar and click in Shades mode, I'm going to move my Shrink modifier here and my Solidify modifier here. Looks good. Now I'm going to apply the Shrink modifier and the Solidify modifier. Now I'm going to do the same with the pupils. Switch to the top view and use the Shrink Wrap modifier. This time I select this one. Perfect. It's too big. We're going to scale it a little bit to 0.8. Let's try it again. That's better now. Okay, now I will apply Solidify. But before doing that, apply Scale. Now go to Solidify and move the Shrink Wrap here and the Solidify here. Now let's use 0.2, negative 0.2. Switch to the Shade mode with the spacebar. I'm going to apply the Shrink Wrap, and I'm going to apply the Solidify. Now select these two objects, Ctrl J, then apply everything, and then mirror. Perfect. Now I right-click on this object and go to Convert to and select Mesh. Ctrl 2. Now select all of these objects and press Ctrl J. But before doing that, apply Mirror. Now press Ctrl J. Unhide these objects and scale this one. Now press S, hold Ctrl pressed and set 0.5. D, S. Hold Ctrl pressed. Set the value of 1.5. Perfect. Let's rotate it. To do this, press R, something like this. 15 degrees. And now I change this setting to local and press RC and rotate it as well. "15 degrees. Perfect. Let's do the bottom part. Now I'm going to hide this, and in this case, I'm going to add my reference image to the viewport. So I switch to the left view and press Shift A. Image and find the reference, and position my image the way I need. Excellent. Let's have a look at it. I scale it. Something like this. Yeah. And now I click here, here, and here. So I won't be able to select. And I'm going to go here and slightly reduce the opacity. Perfect. Now I'm going to use a curve. So press Shift A and add curve. I'm going to use Bezier, and it's over there. I rotate it in the Y-axis, so press R, Y, and set 90. Move it. Rotate it using the R key. I hold Control pressed. Set the angle to -45 degrees. I'm going to place this one somewhere over here, and this one somewhere around here. Now I'm going to adjust it here. I move some vertices and handles. Let's see. Next, I click this icon here and change the value of depth here, approximately like this. It can be 0, 1.5. Okay. Now I press Alt-C to switch to the transparent mode, and I want to select this vertex and press Alt-S. I'm going to scale all of these vertices. Okay, perfect. I go here and decrease the resolution preview and this one too. Excellent. Next, I go to the object mode and right-click Convert to and select Mesh. Now I press Ctrl 2. I will move some edge loops. Let's start with this one. I need to move this one too. So I press the G key twice. I want to ensure that it looks similar to the reference. Okay, I'm gonna add one more here too. Perfect. I add another one here and move it like this. I need to move this one too. Cool. Looks really good. So now I go here and select this edge loop with Alt and click. Control F and click on Grid Fill. And do the same here. Press Control F, Grid Fill. And here I set 1 in the offset setting. Then I press the I key to inset. I set the values approximately like these. In thickness, 0.3 will be okay. Perfect. Now let's make these parts. Create a cube. Shift-A, Mesh, Cube. Let's move it here. Press Alt-Z. Go to the transparent mode. I scale it to 2.5. And we delete this face here. And I'm going to scale it in the x-axis. Press SX 0.2. Press Alt-Z. Press Ctrl-2 and shade. And now let's have a look at it. I rotate it. I scale this part. Okay, I'm gonna scale this part too. Alt-click, select the whole loop, scale, it looks good. Shift-D to copy, Shift-D again. Shift-D to copy again. Scale. And Shift-D for this tiny one. Now to create this one, I'm gonna copy this one. Shift-D. I press Alt-R to reset the rotation. I select this face and press Alt-X and click on Align to Z. Alt-Z and move it upwards. Here, let's scale it like this. And now I select this vertex and I drag it a little bit further. Scale a bit more. Let's see how it looks. It's better now. Maybe we can slightly move this part like this. Next, I add a loop here. Control R. Perfect. Let's fix this flaw here. Awesome. Save with Control S. Let's proceed with the legs now. Let's add a cube. Move it here. I scale it in the z-axis. I enter 1.2. In the x-axis, I set 0.3. And in the y-axis, I set 0.6. I transfer it in Z. Let's see how it looks. Okay, now I rotate it, set minus 20 degrees. Perfect. We're going to add an edge loop here. Control R. Release and add another edge loop here, and move it like this. I specify 0.3 in factor. And I select this edge, this face, and move them in the x-axis. Set 0.3. Now I select this part over here. Go to this menu, select Local. I move it in the y-axis. Set 0.9. Let's apply the subdivision surface modifier. Let's see how it looks. I'm going to shade it, switch to the shade mode, move it in the x-axis. Something like this. And I'm going to select all these edges and apply bevel to them. But before doing that, I apply the scale to ensure that everything's fine. Press Ctrl B, and I set 0.1 in width. Perfect. Let's see. Repeat the same with the other part of the leg. Create a cube. Scale in the y-axis. 0.6. SY. 0.6. SX. 0.3. And SZ 1.2. And I'm going to add an edge loop. I add 3 edge loops here. Select this face and extrude with the E key. Something like this. Set 0.4 in Z. Press Ctrl 2. Switch to the shade mode. Add an edge loop here. And move this a little bit downwards. Press G twice. Maybe it was not enough. Let's move it a little bit more. Press GY. Press Ctrl and release. And now let's go here. And I'm going to use proportional editing here. What is it for? Using it, I will scale the object and the other part of the surface will be affected proportionally. So I press SY, and as you can see, I have a rounding here. I can make it bigger or smaller using my middle mouse button. Something like this. Press SY. Something like this. Perfect. So, going to round this number to 6. You can see the proportional size here. So now I set to 1. You can see the size over here as well. You can see how it functions here. It appears right at the top. And I scale here as well. Press Alt and click on these edges. I'm going to press S and X to scale. We get something like this. Set 1.8. And I'm going to scale this part as well. I won't use the proportional scale, so I just press the O key or click here. Now press S, X, and scale a little bit like this. Here it can be 1. Here 0.6 will be okay. I move it here. Let's see whether it matches. Move it here. It works for me. Now save it. I will rotate it and position it like over here. Something like this. Perfect. Now let's make these parts over here. I could use this one. I press Tab and press the L key while hovering over this object and press Shift D. Then press P. Selection. Now go to the Object mode. Excellent. Now I have this object here. The modifier is already applied to it. And I'm going to press Ctrl-Alt-X and select Orient to Center of Mass and press S. So I get something like this. In Scale X, set 2.3, move it here. Let's see how it looks over here. Press G, X. And now I move it like this. Perfect. I switch to the Edit mode, Shift Z to go to the Transparent mode, and press DX. Perfect. I'm going to do the same here. Shift D and move it here. Switch to the Transparent mode. This one is a little bit smaller. Scale it maybe to 0.85. And I move this. Press DX. Something like this. Awesome. Now what I'm going to do is to select all these edges and press Ctrl F and select Grid Fill. After that, I press the I key to inset. .3 is okay for me. Then press E to extrude a little bit. Perfect. In Z, set 0.04. Let's click here to see it better. To clearly see what we are doing, press the I key to inset again. We get something like this. 0.3 is okay. And press E. I enter 0.04. Perfect. Let's see. Now let's add a loop here, and another loop here, and another loop here. Round the factor to 85. Perfect. Mirror this leg. But before doing that, let's fix this flaw here. Press SX and try to achieve something like this. I like it. Let's round this number to around 0.5. And let's join all these objects. Control J. Next, let's use the mirror modifier. Press Control A and select Apply All. Great. Now I have this object here. Now press Control A. To apply the mirror, go to Edit mode, and with the L key, select the object and press B and Selection to separate these two objects. Now I'm going to rotate this leg. I'm going to use my cursor to rotate. So I press the 3 key, click here, press Shift S, and cursor to selected. Then go to the object mode, press the period key, or go here and select cursor. Now rotate it like this. So you will get something similar. Perfect. Now do the same with this leg. Go here. Shift S, cursor to selected. And select only this leg. Press the L key and rotate it like this. Let's see how it looks. This would work for me. I like this. Now what I'm going to do with this whole leg is that I'm going to create a shape key that allows me to store some information, so I won't destroy my object while editing. You can always press Shift D to copy and to save the object. But I can just go here to my object data properties, and in shape keys, click here on this plus button. The first one is basis. This is my original shape, and I'm going to click again. And this key 1 is the one which I will modify. So I press Tab and select all these faces, this one as well. Press R and go to medium point of this. But before doing that, you should move it like this. Let's see how it looks now. Next, I press Shift Z and move it like this. I'm going to move this part in this way. Perfect. And go here and increase the value. See how it looks. I can still modify some things. Excellent. Now it looks better. Control S. Now let's add the sphere over here. Shift A and select UV sphere. I'm going to set 12 here. Since my cursor is over here, the sphere was created over here. Press Shift S and select Cursor to Origin. You can always press Alt G to reset the transformation at the location. So it's going to go to the center of the world or where it should be. If you press Ctrl A and apply everything, even though you pressed Alt G, it won't go to the center of the world. Because now the new center of the world for this object is over here. So when you apply the scale, you reset everything. And it works the same with Alt-S, because Alt-S is for the scale, and in the same way. Alt-R resets the rotations. And I press Ctrl-2 and spacebar and select Shade Mode. I move in the Z-axis, switch to the transparent mode, press G, Z-axis, so we are over here, set 1.3, and when I scale it, I see that it's smaller than the head. Let's scale it again. Like this, 0.4. Perfect. Now let's make the head. Switch to the left view and add a cube. Move it in the Z-axis. Then scale. Press SZ 0.8. And select this face and move it in the Y-axis. Set something like minus 0.3. Now I add the subdivision surface. Next, I add an edge loop here. And I add another edge loop over here. And move it. I press Alt-Z, check it. I scale it in every axis. Something like this. And I'm going to scale in the X-axis, but not here, in this place instead. Like this. Set 0.5. Now I will apply the subdivision surface. Perfect. And select these edges. These faces over here. and extrude them, press E. And in local orientation, press S to scale. Excellent. Add an edge loop here. OK. Select these front faces, right-click, circle, and unselect the regular checkbox. Go here and repeat the same. Loop tools, circle. Perfect. Let's scale the x-axis just a little bit. Now let's apply subdivision surface. And now what I'm going to do is go to the edit mode, press the 1 key and activate proportional editing. I'm going to move some of these vertices to match the background image. Now I will delete these faces and move this vertex here. I move these loops Let's deactivate this, and I'm going to close these holes. Press F to fill the gaps. Same here. Control R and F here. So let's adjust this. Deactivate this here. Make the eyes. Now press Alt-E, extrude the surface, set approximately 0.15. Okay, now select these edges and scale them like this. One 1.6. And select these edges. I move them in the Z-axis like this, and I'm going to move this a bit and this one a little bit too. Press G twice or scale. Maybe. I move it in the Y-axis with GY. And I select this one and scale it. Now I'm going to create a UV sphere. I set rings to 12. Rotate by 90 degrees in the Y-axis. Control 2, shade mode. Press R, Y 90. Control 2, shade smooth. And I scale it like this. I set 0.13, move it over here, and scale in the y-axis. I set 1.8, rotate it like this to place it here. Something like this. I'm gonna save. Go here, unselect this checkbox. Perfect. Now I'm going to make the teeth. Create a cube. I scale it to 0.05. And I also scale it in the z-axis. Set 0.1. Sorry. It should be something like this. Two point one. And I delete this face. And press Ctrl 2. See how it looks. I add an edge loop here. Perfect. And now, shade smooth. And I'm going to move it over here. I fit it in the mouth. Press SX. Awesome. Now GX. Shift D. And going to place it here, and move it. Press G twice. Zero 0.6. Shift D. And Shift D again. Now let's see how it looks. GX. 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 Place another copy here like this. GX. See it in the front view. Shift D. Move it here. Perfect. Let's move them a little bit more. Now join all of these objects and mirror. Press Ctrl A and apply all. Great. Now let's move on to this one. I'm going to apply a mirror for this. Press Shift D to copy this and rotate. Before rotating, I press Ctrl Alt X. Orient to center of mass. Press R, Y, 180. Next, I place this element over here. I will delete these ones and move the other ones. Press G, X. I will delete this one and I'm going to mirror them here. Now I'm going to copy these ones. Shift D and place it over here. Alt Z. Let's have a look at it in the transparent mode. See how it looks. The back part. Shift D, scale. Shift D, scale. Shift D, scale. Repeat again. I will apply everything and go to mirror. Let's finish with the eye. Let's add a plane. I isolate this object. Go to the Edit mode, select Subdivide, and scale it in the X-axis, 0.5, Select this vertex, scale again in the x-axis, set 0.1, apply subdivision surface. Excellent. I move this here, change this to global, RY, minus 90, go here, press R, set 90, scale like this. Let's set 0.15. I will rotate this a bit. Move here. Perfect. And I'm going to apply the shrink wrap modifier here. Select Project. Going to scale it again. I select these two objects. What I'm going to do is rotate them like this. See how it looks. Perfect. And I'm going to add Solidify. Place this here and this here. And apply Scale. Excellent. And I'm going to select these faces and press the I key to apply an inset. Great. Go back. I will add some edge loops here because the eye is not even. Let's see now. It's better. Perfect. Next, I apply Shade Smoke to this. Select this one and scale it. I will apply the shade and then solidify. Next, I'm going to mirror and apply all. Now we're going to do the scales. So let's press Shift A, select Curve, then Path, switch to the top view, isolate, go to the Edit mode, and here it can be 2.1 because the cursor is over here, so you can position it over here. The value can also be 2.0, SX. Here, it's 0.5. Perfect. Let's move this here. RY 90 and go here. Let's scale it. Switch to the transparent mode. Press S. Something like this. Move this closer. Perfect. I'll make a copy of this, just in case. Now I go to Modifier, click here and click on Shrink Wrap, and I'm going to select this. Snap the shape. Just click Apply, and that's it. Or you can always try to look for the best options here. Target Normal could give us a good result. Then you click the Apply button here. Next, go to the Properties and increase the depth value. And I reduce the resolution here. And this setting over here too. The value is too high. 4 should be fine. I'm going to do the same for the other ones. So I'm going to use this copy over here. Click here to lock my reference image. Shift D to copy, then I move, press R, Shift D again, and again. And I'm going to repeat the very same procedure. Apply Shrink Wrap and click here. The same here. Shrink Wrap. Click here, and the same again, Shrink Wrap. By the way, you can copy modifiers from one object to another. In case you have many similar elements that you need to edit and you don't want to repeat all the steps again and again. So what you have to do is to select the object that you want to copy, the one without any modifiers, put this back like this, so for example, I have this object without any modifiers, and I have this object with the modifier. To do this, I should select this object and select this last one that has the modifier, then press Ctrl L. It brings up the Link Transfer Data menu. I select Copy Modifiers. Try to do it again here and here. Transfer Modifiers. Here, repeat the same. I have to use this one. Ctrl L. Copy Modifiers. Now, there are some issues with this one. I should fix it. Maybe I can rotate it in the Z-axis and scale it a little bit. Now, what I'm going to do is copy the data, this data from this object to this one. Click here, then click here, Ctrl L. Select Link Object Data. And the reason why I have to do this procedure before applying the shrink wrap modifier is because it copies the data of the medium point as well. So if I apply the modifier first, my object will be displaced because the medium point will be displaced too. So make sure to do this while you still have the shrink wrap modifier. The same here. Ctrl L. Link Object Data. And here. Ctrl L. Link Object Data. And this one. Okay. Now I'm going to apply the modifier here. Ctrl A, and here it is. Before applying to this object, I'm going to move it because it's overlapping. Let's see. Perfect. Now, after doing that, what I'm going to do is right-click, Convert to Mesh. Then select this loop. Next, press Ctrl F and click and select Grid Fill. Then do the same here. Shift R to repeat the last action. And let's see how it looks with my subdivision modifier. It looks perfect. Now I'm going to repeat this procedure with the whole object. Now let's do that. Okay, we're done with the modeling part. I have only done this side. You can do the other one if you want. And that's it for this part of the tutorial. In the next video, we're going to create some materials and we're going to render this model. See you in the next video.